Right. So what I said we would do, rather than, I mean, if you were working on this as a real model, you'd probably, the best thing to do really would be to, I think, would be to go and block it all in before we start putting the details on. But I want to put the details in the bonnet area, because just to show you, how we add the details, because obviously it's going to take a long time to create all of the rest of the model. So I think it's better that we now concentrate on some details here. Like I say, it wouldn't be the normal routine that I'd go through. I'd do all of the blocks first before putting any details in at all. But we'll do it this way round. Okay, so we've got these surfaces here, and we've got a bit of that's been trimmed back to that point. So what I need to do is I need to add the bit from here down to the front where it blends in, and there's also this other side of the gap there that I need to create. So I think I'll do that first. So if we just look at that in the top view, and we'll do what we did before. So I need to pick a plane. So let's put our planes on, and I've got this plane somewhere in space. Maybe it's not visible. Let's have a look. Yeah, so it's the Z1 1500, which is that one there. So that's the one I picked before when we were creating curves. So I'm going to create some curves on that plane. Now the grid, if I click on preset, because it had lots of grid lines on there which I didn't want, and it seems to all come back again. But if you look in the menu, I've actually got it where I've got grid spacing of 1000 with no subdivisions, but it was actually displaying it as though it was like 10 subdivisions, which I don't want. So let me go into grid again. So simply by picking on that preset, for some reason the grid lines have come back in. I think because I've been doing other work, and so I've got rid of them just by clicking on that button there. But let's get rid of all of these so we don't have all these planes in there. Some of these planes, in time you'll be able to delete them. The only ones I really know what they are these two, really, which were just for setting up curves. So I'm going to go in here and create some curves. I'll just get rid of all the locators, and we'll go into this layer here. I don't think I've got any curves there. I mean, I might have, because I probably did create some time ago, and then there we go. I did have some. So it's those ones there. It was such a long time ago, I couldn't remember where they were. And you can see my layers are a bit of a mess, but it doesn't matter. So this one, I assume I must have aligned. Let's just go and check that to there. And I don't know whether to put G3 on there. I think I probably did. It looks like a G3 continuity there. So that's good. Don't want history on. And we should just isolate that with the mesh itself and shade it up just to make sure that we're close to that data there. So it's slightly off here. And in retrospect, I think I should have put history on, because then I can adjust it if need be. So I'm just going to push it into that corner a little bit. And I'm also going to move these CVs here. It's not the best color to be seeing this in against the yellow, so let's just change it to blue. I can either query edit that to move the points around, or I can just grab hold of that CV, because if I try and move it in the Y direction, it won't let me do it, because it's constrained by that align with history on. So I can actually do it this way as well. I don't have to go into query edit to do it. I think that'll do. And then we don't really need this curve here to go so far down there. We can just trim that back. But if we're trimming it, so if I was to trim that and we've got history on, I think it will mess up. So we want to delete the history. If in doubt, just delete the history, that's for sure. And if we go into trim, then we can trim that back to there. So we've got that curve. In fact, I've got it. It's actually in 3D really. It's sort of almost in the right position. Not that it needs to be. So I'm going to toggle back to my normal construction plane, world space, so that I can see what's going on. Or just so that I don't use that plane. So I'll switch those planes off, and we'll change the color of that so I can see it's a curve easily. And then we need to so we need to put in we need to project that onto those surfaces. And when I project it, of course, what's going to happen across here, when I project that onto those two surfaces, I'm going to get two surfaces in. And what you can do, if you really wanted to, like if this was a lot more surfaces and you thought, I don't really want it as lots of bits of surface, then you can't project it onto multiple surfaces, unfortunately. But you could do it where you'd have to do it manually, to be honest. So you'd have to measure from that curve to the surface, and then you do the same thing. That curve, you have to do it twice. And you can put that in, and then you could manually move those CVs up and down if you wanted to. So you'd have to. I'm not suggesting that's a great idea here, and it's not what I'm actually going to do, but you could manually get that roughly to the right point just by moving the CVs up and down if you wanted to. I don't think it's necessary. I'm just going to split it into two, but it's the only way really that you can get that onto those surfaces. It won't be 100%. It won't be down to 0.001, but if you were within, say, 0.1 of a mil, it would be fine. You could then create a draft surface of it. But I'm just going to use project. So let's delete all those locators there. And so I'm going to project that onto that surface there. And if I can find project. Trying to think where yeah, it's under surface edit. Another one that gets me because it's under surface edit. So I'm thinking of curves and it's under surface edit. So we need to go into project and it's curves. I knew it wasn't under curves, but I couldn't think where it was. So let's select the surfaces. So definitely, this is why you need to define your own shelf so that you can find things. So I would put that under curves in my case. I think that's where I've positioned it. So we want curves match original Z, and we're going to end up with two curves, which you can see, and we've got the deviation coming up there. 0.007 is the worst one. It's matching the original at the minute, and if I put history on, which means that the CVs are the same sort of spacing as the original. If I put history on, now I don't know whether that's too late to have done that now. Yeah, I think so. So it's because I put it on after I'd done it, it's not going to actually work. So I need to do that again. So let's go to project and I put history on those surfaces, that curve. Now, because I've got history on, you can see the color is slightly different. So if I pick that one, because it's 0.007, if you wanted to get it to 0.001, which I do, then we can increase the degree of the original curve there, and you can increase that until you get to the tolerance that you want. So I've got down to 0.001 there, so that's fine. And it's keeping the spacing of the original CVs. If you don't do that, I've just got to work out which curve I want to get rid of. It's that one. Yeah, so get rid of that then. And of course this one as well, I could have done that at the same time, of course. And so we pick that surface. This one, there's going to be only one curve. Again, we've got history on there, so we can increase the degree on the original curve and see if we can get that down to, so 7 degrees 7, that's fine. So we're going to delete that. and that's within 0.001. So now we want to use MS Draft to put in that little surface off the edge of that. Actually, one thing, I suppose, it's not going to make much difference in this case, but yeah, it won't make much difference. But sometimes what you want to do is create a draft surface which is at a particular angle to the surface. So it needs to keep all the way around. And then, of course, the curves aren't going to help you, because the curves, if you do an MS Draft off the curves, I can't put in an angle to the surface. I can only put in an angle to one of the X, Y, or Z directions. Whereas if you've got a surface, you can put in a draft surface normal to that surface and with a particular angle to that surface. If you needed to do that, then you would have to create curves on surface rather than curves. But I think here it doesn't matter. So let's go into MS Draft, that one, and that one, and that one. And again, two surfaces switched on. So we don't want that. The length is far too high, too long. Let's make it 100 mil, which is more than adequate. So it's just make it, if we make it longer than we need to, then that's a good thing to do. And then we want to put in an angle, and I don't know what the angle will be, but we'll have to put some sections in to find out what that should be. So we want to put in our sections, and just, well, X sections and Y sections, because we need to look at it at the front as well. That was quite a good guess on the angle. It's not too bad. Let me just increase the number of steps we've got on our Y so we can see a bit more clearly. That really doesn't help, because I think the data finishes before this section here, so we probably need even more Y sections. If you really want to look at it in detail, it's getting a bit difficult to see, I have to admit. So did I put history on? Yes, I did, thank goodness. So what we'll do is we'll pick, we can pick that as an object. So you see that although it's three surfaces, I can pick it as one object. So rather than picking surface, if you pick object and it's come from the same function, then you can actually pick the whole lot in one go. And then we want to pick the data as well. So we just isolate all of that lot. And we just want to see how close we are to the data. Because our top surface is different, then it's not going to follow exactly those sections all the way around. And yeah, as long as we've got the character of this, it's okay. And so we want roughly the same angle. It's probably not that critical from a design point of view, but obviously if this is an engineering surface, then you would have some criteria as to what that angle should be, that we'd have to make sure it was an open angle. If you were forming a panel, a panel either from metal or glass fiber or something, or carbon fiber, you need a particular draft angle that needs to be open, so that if you were to tool that, you can get the part out of the tool. But we've got loads of draft angle on there if you wanted to engineer it. But I'm looking at, it's a similar angle, and here we are, and here we are, and then in the middle it's quite different, but that's just because we've deviated from the data, I think. So it seems like 30 degrees was actually quite a good guess. I mean, you obviously can adjust it by typing in numbers, or you can use, if you want to fine tune it, you can use Alt as well in that box and just do it that way, slow it right down, because the slider itself is very twitchy. So I think we'll go with that. Bring everything back in. And I'll take these sections off. Take the Y sections off anyway. Take all the sections off. And we'll add this surface. Actually, I've created one surface, haven't I? So again, this is another time when history is really useful, because if I go into Query Edit and go into there, and I think I didn't want that as one surface, because the trouble is that's one surface. Oh my goodness, I thought there was quite a few CVs on there, and I didn't really think too closely about it, but we've got 29 spans, which I didn't actually intend to do. And it's because I've got the surface type as single surface. So we can change that to multiple surface, and we can make them all Bezier, which means basically ensures that they're all single span surfaces. And so that's just a much cleaner result. We've now only got 3 surfaces. So if I go into top view there, this all looks absolutely fine. The CVs here look fine. This looks a bit dodgy, and this is because it's going around the corner. You often get that situation where the CVs with draft don't always look brilliant going around the corner like that. So what I'm going to do there is I'm just going to go and modify those by hand, and that one actually, of course, it will break the history now. So let's change the mass sensitivity. This one, by sliding them, I'm changing them by very little. That one looks a bit like it goes, if you look at these 3 here, that one sort of goes a bit too far out in Y, so I think that should be moved that way to make that a little bit better, and maybe that one as well. I mean, this is changing the angle, of course, but this is what happens. Right, so what I was trying to do is just assign that to another layer, bonnet detail. So we've now got that. So the other bits that we want to do, so let's get rid of body 1, which is all that lot. And there seems to be some planes lying around here, so I'm going to put those planes. I don't know whether they're of any use whatsoever, but I'm just going to assign them to that layer there. And of course, we see everything when I click on there. So let's go back to there. That disappears. There's also a point there that I don't want. Just worth tidying things up. We can. Also, don't need these curves now because we've used them. We can always get back to them. I suppose I can keep them in there. Let's just shove them in that. Switch that layer off there then. So the other things we want to do here, or the first things we need to do here, before we put any more detail in, is we need to get around this corner, and we need to get around this corner. And let's have a look and see. So our draft surfaces here are very, very deep compared with that actual where the mesh is. And what we want to do is cut those back. I mean, I could go and put a fillet in down there and then cut it all back. That'd probably be the sensible thing to do, to be honest. So let's have a look at that. So we need to make a judgment about that fillet size. So we'll run a fillet all the way down there, and then we'll worry about the length of these draft surfaces, which are too long at the minute. So let's go into so surface fillet we want, and we're going to do a G2 curvature matched fillet. It's going to be caudal, so in other words, we can control the width of it, and this is usually the way that you want to do your fillets most of the time, is by putting in a caudal length. So we're going to try and fillet between there and there. The normals are pointing into where we want the fillet, so if they're not correct, you can just go and switch them around. Form factor I usually have as 1 as a starting point, and then we just see what we get. So on this one, I wanted to go from the top to the bottom. You can see it says edge align, which is referring to this this end here. I can tell that because it's joining it up, which is what we want really. And we also want the same thing up here in this case. So it'll do that. In fact, it reduces the number of surfaces in this particular one, but that's which is good. We've got multiple surfaces on and Bezier, so which is fine. But you can overwrite that, so you can say explicit control, and then tell it what you want. So it's going to have to be degree 5 going around here because it's curvature. But down here, Obviously we put continuity checker on and we can see that that's going to fail because it's only degree 1. But you could, if you want to really reduce the degree, you can have a go at doing this. Not guaranteed to work, but there we've done it in 1. And it's just so much easier to have one surface there than multiple surfaces, especially when we're going to trim the ends off it anyway. And so that's a good result. Having done that, I don't actually know whether that's anything like the mesh, so we should put some sections through there. So let's put a section in. If I go and I'll put a Z section in. So we'll go plus axis discrete Z, and we'll pick a location somewhere on there. So we can see it in relation to the data. So it's slightly different to, it's actually very similar character to the mesh, slightly different position because of where we've got this surface, but I think that's close enough. It's absolutely the same character, which is what we're mainly after. So I'm going to go with that. Let's clear that out. And then on this one, again, I'm just going to assume that we might be able to do the same values here. Now on this top edge, you can see I've got edge align on, but it's sort of not making much sense because it's actually joining up to this edge. And the reason is because this doesn't actually extend far enough. So let's undo all of that. And we need to extend this. And we'll extend that one as well at the same time. Through there, and hopefully it behaves itself, which it seems to do. And then we'll do the fillet again on this one. So I've got the same explicit control in there. Wow. Well, we can get away with degree 4, even better. I wonder what it does if I don't do that. It doesn't actually do much different. And I mean, very often you get a very good result without explicit control on in fillets. It's just on corners like this, you might be able to simplify it a little bit. Just makes life a bit easier. So let's go and put a section on there. So I'll say discrete Z, and we'll pick a point somewhere down here. So this is the data, and this is our section. So our section's a bit tight, I would say. So let's make it a bit bigger than that. And so we'll increase this chordal length to something bigger. And again, we can use, in any of these boxes, you can just use Alt and just do it that way. So something like that. So if we're parallel to that, then that's the same sort of character. The CV's, oh, that's picked up the wrong edge. And I can see why it's done it. It's because this surface finishes here. And so what I need to do, so we know what this setting is. So we'll make that 30 because it's close enough. So it's easy to remember then. And I'll do a view edit on there. Wasn't actually in the function. So make that 30. If we say undo all, and what I need to do is pick up this surface as well. So let's pick those surfaces and that one. And now it'll go across that edge. It's completely gone crazy there because it's obviously struggling with this bit. So let's just do, well, actually it's probably, no, it's because it's so, the trouble is, I think what's happening is doing an edge align there, you can just about make out that edge there, but this one's coming straight across. There's not much else I can do there. I could say edge align, but that's not going to help us. So I'm just going to leave that as default. It's splitting it up into multiple surfaces because we've got multiple surfaces to start with. And if I do that, it does that, which is horrible. So obviously that's not going to work. So, well, actually, that's absolutely fine. Actually, that is fine, because if we look at this, this is curvature aligned here. So I'm just going to leave that as it is, because we don't actually need this bottom surface at all, because we're going to trim everything out. So we don't actually need that. Don't even need to trim that, to be honest. And yeah, I've lost the history now because I'm thinking, Yeah, it doesn't matter because all of this is below the data. We're going to actually trim it around here, so this is irrelevant. So we can forget about that. And so we've got that. So let's just save this because I haven't saved it yet. Went a long time without saving then. It's very dangerous. Right, let's take all of the CVs off. So what we need to do now is create a bottom surface in here that's roughly to this data, and then everything can be trimmed to that, and that makes a nice, neat and tidy job. I can see I'm deviating from that data there, but hopefully that's okay. Just switch off the data. And actually I want the data on. And I want to take this bonnet detail off really, and then I want to create a surface in there. So let's go and pick those surfaces, stick that in bonnet detail, and then under here we'll create a new layer, yet another one. So I'm going to call this con for construction, and we'll call this trim surfaces or something, and we're working that. So I'll make it blue. So we've somehow got to create a surface in there that approximates that bottom edge. Now if we go into body 1, we've got this surface here. So if I do Control C, Control V, just to copy that and assign it to there, and then take that out, we might be able to use this as a starting point. Yep, so let's untrim that. It's got that slight hiccup in it, so when I extend it, it's going to exaggerate that even further, but I'll extend that back that way, get rid of that curve on surface. Oh, pick curve on surface, just pick the wrong thing, I think. And then what we can do there is maybe just move it down in the Z direction. So if I move that in the Z direction, it's a cutout surface, so the quality of it, it is important, but it's not a surface we're ever going to see. Now it's quite difficult to tell how far away I am from things here. Obviously that I can see the hole there looks bad. That one needs to come down anyway, just to make it a bit smoother. But we'll need to put some sections on here just to give us an idea of where we are. And we want a smooth surface, of course, reasonably smooth surface, but it's not super critical. It's never going to be something we'll see. So let's just make that 50 rather than 25. It might be just a case of just doing it in the shaded mode, to be honest. I mean, the other thing I could do is just simplify this because I've got too many CVs there. It's 5x3. Let's make that simpler. Didn't really make much difference when I made that, even when I make that 2, actually. Yeah, 2x2. So much easier to deal with. Much easier than 5x3, which would take me ages to create something close. And if I need a bit more shape in it, I can just increase the degree and just do a local change. I'm fussing, really. I mean, this is... I think that's pretty close. Thinking about it, if I was to... I've had that before, and the only way out of that is to crash. Oh gosh. Let's just save it. I think. It's come back. Good. Right. So what we could do is if I just isolate that, if we go into mesh, there is a mesh edge. So this gives us the edges. Now, does it? Don't actually want to fix that. Is that what I'm thinking of? Maybe that's not the function I'm thinking of. Mesh boundaries. Yeah, so I want to extract those edges. And then I can say extract. Pick that one. Oh, there we go. Extract. And I think that's a curve. Yeah, so that creates us a curve. And so that's a guide as to where we want to be. So let me put that curve onto here. You can see it's a rubbish curve. It's 192 spans in degree 1, so no use to us directly, but it does mean that if we wanted to measure from that edge back to the surface, then we can do it. So we can measure between there, and I'll increase the scale. So you can see it says maximum 4.4, so we're pretty close, but I want to go and refine that a bit more. So let's go and move these CVs around, slow them down a bit. Now that the way that deviation goes there, it sort of suggests to me that edge is a little bit wobbly anyway, so it's not super critical. So we'll put some more CVs in there just to see if we can get that a bit closer. It's not strictly necessary, this. I'm just doing this just to show you some more functionality and some ways of analyzing things and so forth. So that's 2 mil off. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. So we'll get rid of that curve. We don't need that now. I'll just switch off that layer. And then we want body side detail back. We want to take the mesh off. We want to take our sections off so we can see what's going on. So we've got that in there now. So if we look around that, obviously the surfaces are slightly different to the mesh, so we might get some varying depth of the draft surfaces, but that's fine. And then we can just go and pick. We can go and pick. If you just go and pick everything, and then unpick that one. So I'm picking surfaces up there which aren't relevant. They don't intersect this one, but we'll still get the intersect going on there. And so if we go into surface edit, and we do intersect, so we really only want you sort of probably don't want that surface in the final model. You could leave it in there, but you'd have to trim it so that you just end up with a bit that is not visible, but you really probably don't want that in your model. It's just going to be, it's unnecessary. So you might go and put just first surface on there for the intersect. We don't really need this one. I can take history off as well because I'm not going to change anything. And then we press go, and then we pick the intersecting surface there. So we've now got that that intersect there we can trim back to. So this surface here was in this layer here. So if I take that out, so we don't have to look at it, it's worth keeping it because in case you changed, if you change this design or something, then obviously it's worth having. The other thing I want to do is just make sure I've got no history on any of this. So we'll delete the history on here. And then we can trim everything out. So I've just used the shortcut there. I shouldn't do that. So in trim, we don't want any of this on, shouldn't need extend on, and we can just trim these out here, including the corners fillets there. And we'll get rid of all of the locators. Oh, missed one. That one there. Okay, so I think we've got there's a curve in there that's not necessary. So let's bring back our body 1. So we've got there's some work to be done around that corner because I haven't worked out how that all hangs together really. And you can see that this isn't actually trimmed to the right spot. In fact, this is going up above this main surface, so that's definitely not right. But we're getting closer. And then the other tricky area is going to be this bit down here. If you wanted to, it's quite useful to do this, even though it's not finished, is to just trim out some of the surfaces so we can see a bit more of what's going on behind the scenes, even though it's may not be 100% there. So I can trim maybe to that and put extend on and do that, for example. So you just get an idea of what's happening. I mean, you could do the same thing on here, but I think because we need to do some work up here, we ought to fix that first. So let's just have a look at that and see whether it all looks okay. I notice there's another point in there. In terms of things like that, let's have just as if you wanted to picking points and things like that. I've been doing it through object, but actually it's not the best way to do it. You really want to do it by picking component. So on my default shelf here, have I got it in there? No, I haven't. But if you wanted to say in your marking menu, because that's where I normally put these things. This isn't my specific marking menu, but supposing we want to be able to pick, say, points, we want to be able to pick planes, things like that in our marking menu. At the moment, I've just been using object, and you can get away with that a lot of the time, but there's a better function. So if we go into, let me just, so we go into the marking menu editor there. So if I want to add some other things to the marking menu, so it's very much like adding things to the palette, we can do that. So I want to find this function called pick component, which is under pick. So if I go into component, and I think I briefly showed you this last week, you've got all of these different options. So by default, everything's switched on. It's all like this. But what's worth doing is setting up some variants of that in your marking menu. And so, for example, points and planes are construction objects. So if I switch all of those off, all of these things off, I can set one up where which just picks construction options. So what we'll do there then is so let's start off with that. That's the default. So if I just drag and drop that one, pick component. So this is middle mouse button. I drag it into there and drop it onto that button there. So if we now look at our marking menu, it's now added component on there, but it's not the specific component that we want. So if I go into the box there, I can then go and switch off all the things I don't want, which is all of that lot, and say go. And then we need to change the name of it as well. So we need to go to change the name in this version. This is 2024. Before you had to press Alt and pick it, and you would allow you to change the name, but that doesn't work now. So you have to drag it up to the top here to edit. And you also find that in your shelf as well. So I can put in a name, which in this case would be, say, pick construction, or whatever you want to call it, and then OK it. So it now says that. So now when I go into here, if we look at the box, it tells us that we're just picking construction options, objects rather. So very useful to set that up, but you can also obviously set up variants of that. So you could have one that only picks surfaces or only picks meshes or whatever you want it to do, and add multiple ones down there. Well worth doing. So I've now got that one in there. So if I pick construction, it will only let me pick points or planes. So if I create a plane in that view, I'll create another one here. Oh, that was one. And I pick create a point. also vectors as well. Now if I go pick construction, I can drag a window around that lot, and that's the only thing I'm picking as opposed to everything. Right, so let's have a look around here. So I think all we need to do there is to just try and wash this surface out. Let's just have a look at the mesh and see what that looks like. So it's not very clear, to be honest, what that does. And there's a bit of a peak on the surface or on the mesh there anyway. So I think we just do whatever we think we need to do, really, working on the surfaces rather than actually referring back to the mesh. Now let's have a look at curves and surface, because I can't remember what I've got. I think I've got curves and surface all the way there. So let's go evaluate, position, go. Yes, this one goes along there, doesn't quite reach the end because we've extended that surface. So we know we just need to somehow wash this out. The other thing, like I say, is this surface actually lifts up too much. It needs to come into these other surfaces somehow. We could project a curve on surface here. So let's go into project. So we want to make it the curve on surface in the Z direction, and it's that surface there projected on there. This may not be quite in, because these were 0.001 when I projected those curves, so it might be slightly out on some of them, but maybe not. It sort of doesn't matter if it's a tiny bit out, because we can we can get over that with a fillet anywhere. And the other thing I should do, I suppose, is while I'm looking at this and thinking about it, is because I put those are fine, but because I've put a draft surface in there, of course I never checked whether, and I did change it, but I only changed CVs which are away from that edge, but there's every possibility that that's not quite aligned. And of course, should have done this before, shouldn't I? Never mind. Picked items including group. Do you want to continue? I think so. That message there, because these all belong to the same group, you know, when I was picking that as an object, so if I say object, it picks all of that as a group, because they were all created from MS Draft. When I try and untrim that one, it's actually saying, oh, it didn't say this that time, but it was saying that the whole group would be untrimmed. Did I want to do that? And I wasn't sure. I was thinking about it. So I'm going to have to go back to that. Strictly speaking, I should recreate that curve on surface, but I'm not going to bother because it doesn't make much difference. And so I'm just going to get away with this. But I should have done the alignment, of course, before doing the trimming. So we'll do that. And of course, it breaks it there. Why wouldn't it? So we do that. G2. I could try changing that to skew. And like I say, that gap is 0.01. We're going to put a fillet on it. It's only a draft surface, so I'm not going to worry about that. If it was A class, we probably would have to, because somebody's going to check it. But in this case, I know a fillet of that size is not going to be any different. It's not going to make any difference at all. It's more important that that's curvature aligned. Right, so let's have a look at this end. So we've got to try and work out what to do here. So yeah, the thing to do here is to get this edge needs to come down to this surface. So if we, and I think the sensible thing to do would be to get it to come down to the surface, probably at this point. So let's put a curve on that edge. Well, actually what we'll do, so again, this is going to be another area where I'm actually going to have to change these, having put those in. I do need to fix that. So I'm going to do a project curves. So it's going to be that surface there, and I'm going to project that curve in the Z direction. So that's where it's telling me it should be coming in. You know, if this is right on that surface, that's where it would have to come in. Like I say, we want to get it at this point. I think it needs to come down there so we can wash this surface out to nothing. So we can put a curve on this edge. Let's do that. Doesn't really matter which one we pick. And then I'm going to trim it at that point, or detach it, or just do it freehand. I'm just going to extend it backwards to somewhere like that. We can always change this. This corner is the fact that it's that size isn't super critical. It's a design decision after all. So we can now align this curve to this other curve. This curve is lying on the surface, and so we'll do an align into there. We want it to be G2, and we'll align that to there. We've got degree 5 there, so we're okay. It's sort of lifted it up a little bit by being G2. You can see that goes into there. So maybe we should make that a bit longer. So let's go and create history of and revert. So having dragged it back there, I'm thinking maybe, yeah, that would work if we make that a bit longer, because we could wash it all the way out to this point really, and then this edge will always be below the blue surface when we do that. So I'm just going to wash it out a bit longer, because it then has a bit more time to get curvature aligned to this curve here. That looks a bit better. It's not lifting it up quite so much, and I don't want to go back obviously and change this surface. The other thing we could do is if I make that degree 6, it localizes that change a little bit more, so I'm going to do that. And I suppose having done that, I think I might change my mind yet again, which you might notice I do regularly. So let's do file save as, save that there. Just thinking that we could go up there and then cut that off there, or we could go up there and across there. It won't make much difference, probably. I think if we go along there and then up there, that would sort of make everything neat and tidy. So let's go and pick that edge there, and then in top view we can just take this back, and this is one which is not going to, it just does work, doesn't it, with extend. It's detached doesn't work with the intersect, but that one does. So we can go there, and then we're going to, so our curve there, actually, where is our curve? It's that one there. So actually I want to extend that curve all the way to the end there, and we can get rid of that curve on the surface. It's not a curve on surface, it's a curve sitting on the surface. I'm not actually sure whether that's that curve that sits on the surface. I'm going to extend it a little bit, which should still sit on the surface, and then we can just need to make sure everything's hanging together here properly. So that curve there that we're rebuilding off the edge, and that one there, let's just isolate those two, just so I make sure I trim it back to the right spot, because I'm not sure I've done that correctly. So let's just make sure, absolutely certain, trim that back to there, bring that other curve in, and then I'm going to align this one, that's the rebuild curve, onto the projected curve. Just make sure that happens correctly, and then we can get rid of the projected curve. Let's have a look at this surface. So I want to align this surface now to this curve. So that's going to bring it down a little bit. And there's a tiny little gap there. Position influence is 1, so it's just because it hasn't got the same degree. So we make that degree 6. And let's just have a look at this other end, see whether we've still got curvature alignment there. We have, good. And then we go into top view, So this curve on surface here isn't quite long enough. Sometimes you can just get away with extending the curve on surface. If you extended the surface, then there's a possibility that that might work. I'll delete the locator, create a new locator. No. Okay, so we'll delete that curve on surface. It's only microscopically out, I know, but and then we'll align that into using curve on surface, project, Z, that one into this surface here, which is now broken, that one, which is a bit surprising. Let's revert that, see what's going on. Does that corner not just quite line up or something? It looks like it does. I mean, if I want to make certain, I can go into locator's distance, and you can go and use Control and Alt down this edge, and then Control and Alt down this edge. Huh. Or maybe not. You should be able to. Why doesn't that let me do it? It does let me do it. Oh, it just wants to go and pick the other end, doesn't it? Oh, never mind. So when I project that on, it's breaking the position alignment there. Let me just do this, where the alternative is we project curve on surface onto there in Z. So we're just doing a project and then checking it, but I'm pretty certain this is not going to be right either. It is, okay. So I didn't do anything to the surface. I just didn't change it at all, just projected the curve on surface, and lo and behold, it worked. So the other edge that we need, which is a bit awkward, is this edge here. We need to get that curvature aligned into both of these surfaces, and so it's a little bit awkward because we've got two surfaces to project that onto, to align that into, and it's also it's a bit messy around that corner, but it should work. So I'm going to go into Object Edit, Align, G2 Project Z. Now, if I project that onto there, I don't do this very often. I'm not sure that this is going to work, but if I use Shift and pick that one, so okay, yeah. So that was used to, yeah, it's going to delete history. I don't quite understand that message, but it's something to do with being a circular reference. And because I haven't got history on, it's a good job I just saved that, isn't it? If I had history on, I could have reverted that, but of course I didn't have history on, because often you don't want history on, and so it's done that, which is now left me in a mess. So fortunately, I can just say open recent, delete that one, go back, and so if I do this again, I'll put create history on, because then I can save the day by going back into revert if necessary. So what I was trying to do was use Shift and pick that surface and that surface. No, I don't think it lets me do that. I know it does into edges, but I never actually tried it into those surfaces. So actually I messed that up, because I think I've deleted history again, haven't I? So I need to go back to my recent model. You can see why I save regularly. So the only way we can do this is we'll have to detach it, and at this point, and then make it sort of force it to join up by putting in two surfaces. We can detach it so it splits it all the way across there, or you could, which is probably as good a way as any, to be honest. Or I could have split it across there, create one surface in there, and then split this into two, but then we end up with three surfaces. So, but I'll go into detach, and we'll detach that there. And yeah, so this is one where I need to put the intersect in as a point first, because detach doesn't seem to recognize that. So we put that point in, and then we can go into Object Edit, detach. Don't want to keep the originals, want that surface there, and then we just use Control to pick that point there. And then we've got to put in curvature analysis on there. And then we're going to try and align this way. So I'll put history on again because it hopefully will save me if I make a mistake. So we can say create history there into that surface. Now it's very unlikely that low degree will work, and you can see that's the case. So I'm going to have to increase the degree. So we've still got position on there, curvature on there. That breaks, of course, because the two surfaces are now separate. And then we do that into there. And again, now this one's got a double error going on here because suddenly it's woken up to the fact that I've used detach. So you can see what it's doing. It says there's a gap. I think it says 70 mil or something. It's measuring between this edge and this edge because it hasn't realized I've split it up into two. And so what you've got to do there is you've got to delete that locator. If I pick that locator and go into the information window, you'll see what a crazy result it's giving us. So it says 78 millimeters. So it's clearly measuring between those two, which is nonsense. It's just because it doesn't actually realize what's going on. This one actually does apply, I think. Let me just check that in the information window just to make sure I'm reading that correctly. But I think it says 0.0, yes, 0.04. So that is correct. Obviously, it's not what we want, but so let's go into here and do that. And so this one here, let me see if I've got history on still. Hooray, thank goodness. So I can just pick it up with query edit. Obviously, we need a higher degree again on that one. So that's fine. Position wise, it's not fine. It's 0.04. Which is a bit surprising, and it's also what's slightly worrying is that it says 0.04 at this point, which is on the corner. So it makes me suspect that the corner is not correct, and I can see why. What's happened is when I've projected this surface onto here, when I detached it, it's obviously split it. It's slightly off. It's over here to detach. When I project it, it's actually snapped it to the edge there. So the reason that we've got that gap at that point is because the corners have come apart, and it's purely because of the line there. So we might be able to just fix that by extending this surface. So I'll extend that surface. It'll break the history, overlap them, and then we do a trim convert. And then see what we get. When we do a trim convert, it's going to create a new surface, so our locators will disappear, but that's fine. So we'll go and pick that, trim convert it to that edge there. So our locators all disappear because it's a new surface. And then we want to go into evaluate G2. So we want that one for some reason's gone. Oh, that one's gone off. And this one here we want. So that's good. And that's good. That's great. So this point here, we can use our new construction option there in my marking menu, which we know it only picks construction objects, and I can pick that point without having to go and zoom into it or anything. This is a little bit of a shame, but let's just go into here, just double check, and I'm absolutely certain this is the case. That's position aligned, isn't it? So we've got position there. It's fine. So we just need to get this back into alignment here. So this is going to be edge. It's going to be a partial edge to there. And strictly speaking, we should keep the vector under control by restraining it in the Z direction there. So that's great. That all worked. Hooray. So we can now trim this out. So we can start to see what we're getting. Actually, before I trim it out, let me just untrim that. One thing worth checking, because this can be the case, I go and just save that. Yeah, what you want to check really is that this surface actually goes the way you think it goes. Because you might find, like we did when we were checking this edge, and I put angles in. I think on this one it'd be worth putting an angle in. So if you go into pick that locator, and that one as well for as well. We might as well pick those and change those to tangency. And then you can put on a large scale. So under comb, this is position. So this is the scale for tangency here. So let's make that 100. That's what you want to see, is that progressing from 0 gradually up. Because the angles are so small, it's very easy for the surface to have ended up lifting up, maybe for whatever reason. So we do the same scale on here. We need to change that to tangency as well. Change that scale to 100, and then we just see that that's progressing along there. The other thing you can do, I mean, obviously when you shade it up and trim it out, you'll probably be able to see that to some extent, but when it's very small angles, it's less easy to see. The other thing you can do is you can measure curve to surface. So for example, that edge there needs to be below this top surface, and if it's not, then we've got a problem. So again, if there was a problem, we might find that display goes down and then goes up, so or goes down in the middle or something, which would be a bad thing. It would mean that we've got a problem there with that surface, but that's good. So let's get rid of those, and then we can trim this back and shade it up. So you can see the angle there. We've got about 2 degrees at that end. You can just about make it out there. You can't really see it at this end because it becomes so small. You'll be able to see it clearer in the diagnostic. So if I put, you can see there the break, that position break, and you can see how it gradually increases with any of these sort of diagnostics. You can see there's definitely a break going on there. Sorry, I'm just checking something. I realised I missed 2 parcels yesterday at the door because I can't hear the door. Sorry about this. And hopefully I've not had any. No, I don't seem to have had any missed calls. Right. Yes, you can see that through there. You should be able to see it through. Oh, this has got no. Yeah, you can't really see it there either. It's only when you get the highlight you can see just that break there. It's probably about half a degree or something. So it's very, very subtle by the time you get down there. When you put ordinary shading on, you really can't see that. And that's what you want. You want it to disappear. But it always disappears a lot, visually it disappears a lot further away from where you've actually set up the washout than you might expect. Right, so now we need to sort out this lot as well. So these surfaces in here, let me go into there. And because this goes all the way around the corner, let's just go and just to make absolutely certain history is deleted. You can see how much history we've ended up with, and that can be a disaster if you start trying to do other things in this area. So really I want to, this surface here I need to untrim, so I'm just going to isolate it, untrim it, and I'm actually going to get rid of these curves on surface, and I'll recreate that bottom curve on surface. This is where our construction that construction surface is going to come in so useful, because we can easily do this. Now this surface goes all the way to this point, and we want it to join up with this edge. Rather than, you don't need to do a trim or extend or anything, you can just use a line on this, and it will pull the whole thing back, so we can go into there. If we just align it here, obviously it's a full edge, so that will work. It pulls that across there, but it's not pulled this point across there. Not that it really matters too much, but to pull that edge across, if you put blending on, you pick up that extra row there and you put a blend factor of 0 on, it effectively moves it into the right position. So if I look at the proxy display, that's where we were. It's moved the whole surface into the correct position, so there's no need for trimming or anything, or trim convert. Take proxy display off. We're not position the lines, but then that's not surprising because we've got a low degree compared with that other surface there, so we just increase the degree until it's the same. Position influence of 1 on, so all the CVs join up, and we've got a result, which is great. And when it comes to it, I can just put in that construction surface and retrim this. It's no problem at all. that surface there, we could go back to the fillet function, but there's really no need to do that. Let's untrim that, isolate that, and again we can get rid of all the curves on surface on there because we can recreate those so easily. We've got curvature on that side. We can just use a line again on this side. So let's go into a line, G2, project, take blending off. I'm going to do it normal to that surface. Sorry, I'm picking the wrong surface. That one into here, and so it's managed to project it onto there. Not 100% at the minute. One thing is that on this end it doesn't matter because we're going to trim everything out. It doesn't matter what's going on down there. But this end we need that to be edge align, so it actually follows and flows through. And then we just need to increase the degree to fix that, hopefully. I say that's just all we need to do, but it might not be the case, of course. And then we can trim that back to there. And then we just need to go and find that construction layer again, which is that one. And then we can go and pick that and that one. And we just do the intersect between the two and find that. And then we can take that out. We can then trim those back to that same construction. So the construction is so useful to have that there. And we are going to fillet this eventually, of course, so that will get rid of some of this stuff here. But let's just have a look at that surface because you just need to understand how these curves on surface work. So we've got this edge coming in here. Just thinking whether this actually does work as it stands. Of course, the edge of that blend isn't on this surface. It actually goes slightly below it. And we're going to put a fillet in there. I think what we will need to do, actually, when it comes to it, we'll need another surface in here or extend this surface or something to cover up this hole. Because actually, the bit that we've got, if I just take that out there, the only bits that we can actually trim back are that. So I'm going to extend that curve on surface there. So we end up with this. That needs extending as well. So we've ended up with that because that curve actually doesn't lie on this surface. So it's trying to think of all these things. It might be. So we need a surface that just covers that area there. It's a little bit messy if I just put in a surface there, but on the other hand, it does the job. It might be that, maybe that edge coming down there, maybe that wasn't such a brilliant idea, that maybe we'd be better off if we cut that across there, but we can use what we've got and do something new with it anyway. That's not a problem. Just need to work out which way that goes. I think the thing is I brought that to that point there because then it washes out in the slowest over the longest possible distance and gives us a much smoother result there. Otherwise it happened a bit quickly, and but I'm just slightly concerned whether that's going to work as it is. Let's just try it as it is. So all I'm going to do is fill that in with a rail, and it might be absolutely fine. Might as well try it. As I say, it's not the most elegant of solutions to do that, but let's go for it. So let's do a rail. We're going to do it between that edge and that edge. That's very nice. Why is that quite so mad? I have no idea. Let me undo that. I've got that surface and that surface. So this is what I'm trying to do. The generation curve there and that one there. Maybe I just picked the wrong thing. No, it's definitely completely and utterly mad. I'm just trying to see what's in my menu that's causing that to go so crazy. I could try parallel because that usually works better. Wow, That is still rubbish. I mean, I don't need all that surface, so I can drag these markers back because I've got curve segments on there, so I can do that. That really is absolutely crazy. So I've got position on. I mean, I could try changing that and changing it back again, seeing if it's not woken up to the fact that it's G0. I have no idea why that's quite so crazy. Let's try fixing the generation curve into the rail curve or on curve, or that's slightly better, but obviously it's not what I want. Yeah, so I don't know why that's gone absolutely crazy. I don't know whether that curve on surface is a problem or something. I don't know. Let's go into curve edit, duplicate that and that. So those curves, I think, look okay. That's 2 spans, but it doesn't really matter. Shouldn't matter. Or does it? Yeah, 2 clear spans. So there's my edit point. So it's not like there's a tiny little span in there or anything. So it should work. So I'm going to just try it with the curves. Maybe they don't join up, but they should do. So let's go into evaluate curve position. Click on there. Those join up. So I can't see any reason why that shouldn't give us a result. Okay. Could not build surface when I do that. Take that off. It's built a surface. Let's go with that. I mean, I don't actually understand why that's doing that, but it doesn't matter. We can live with this. So obviously this surface is too long. It's not where we want it to be. So let's cut that back. So I'm just doing an extend there. We can drag that down that way. We can drag that down that way. So it covers that hole. Now I can see a problem with this because we need this to be curvature aligned on this edge, and we also need it to be curvature aligned into this surface. Otherwise, that's not going to be correct. So I think this is going to be. I'm going to have to restructure this corner. I wasn't convinced when I put this in at an angle, I must admit, and I'm not sure it's as simple as just making that go straight across there. It might be. That could be the answer, is that needs to go across there. That might work, and then we take that up there and we just blend that out over a longer distance, and that might be the solution. I'm just going to go with this and see if we can get anywhere with this. So I'm just dropping the degree because I know it's such a small area that we won't need very high degree if we can get it to work, but I suspect that we won't. So I'm going to do a G2 partial into there. And I'm also I'm concerned about the highlights in that corner. I think they could be actually very bad as it stands. In any case, so I have got history on. I need history off, and then I'm going to try and align that this way into here, and this is where it's going to not want to know. Plus, I think so we'll take that off. It's actually looking like it might work. I know it doesn't match, but it's actually looking like it might work. This is usually a bad thing, is coming off at these angles, but because everything's coming down to being completely washed out, then you can get away with these angles sometimes, but I don't know whether that's the case here. So let's just increase the degree a bit more in both directions. So we've got it aligned there, and we'll do the same thing that way. So that's breaking it there, but let's go back to G1 and then change this to G2. No. And so, but we are quite close in terms of angle, and also the curvature. So we could, it's like I say, it's a messy solution if we get it to work. But obviously it could be a simple solution if it does work. Let's put vector on in the Z direction and see if that helps. So curvature wise, it's very, very close. We've gone up to degrees 6 by 6, but we might as well just go for 6 by 7 by 7. Normally I wouldn't do this, but sometimes it's the thing to do. We're so close there, it's crazy. It was 0.11, it's 0.12. I'm sure we can get rid of that just by a little bit of a tweak to the CVs. I'm going to go for that one because it's nearby, although it will affect the curvature this way. That's coming down, and it's in. But I think that the thing is whether that looks any good in terms of highlights. It doesn't look too bad, I think. We put in more repeats, we'll get more detail. You can see there's something goes on there. It's sort of, but it has to go from this level to that level somehow anyway. Let's have a look at that one. You can't even see that unless, if you increase the number of bands, of course, you can carry on to infinity or whatever the system allows you to do. That's fine. So it's a solution that works. It's not the neatest of solutions, but you know, we're going to fill it over the top of it as well. But the fillet, of course, the fillet's only going to come around here. So by the time we finished, it's going to be a tiny little triangle, and so I'm happy to leave that as it is. If I had all the time in the world, then you know, I'd go around and spend another 2 hours trying to restructure that and make it better. And probably I should have thought, you know, maybe I should have gone across there, and that would have been fine. But the trouble is, if you wash it out over too long a distance, then that's when you start to get these problems, possibly with the tangency on the edges, that it's not actually doing what you want it to do. Right, I shall stop at that point. So the next big thing to do will be to get this bit in here. So yeah, the next big thing will be getting this in, which I'm hoping won't be too difficult. This area here is a slight area of concern when I looked at the mesh originally. I'm hoping that that's all going to work out, because you can see this edge I've got below this surface, which I think is the right thing to do. It was a question of, you know, when you look at the mesh in that corner, it's actually, it's the problem there. You can see the mesh isn't quite resolved in that area, and it's how you get from that angle break, which is here quite clearly is one surface, and then you get to this point. So I'm hoping that I've done the correct thing in putting that across here, so it goes underneath here. Time will tell when I try and get all of that to work, but I think that will work.